Hey, it's Sterling K. Brown from the Hulu original series Paradise. The next chapter begins as Xavier's search for his wife takes him above ground, and what he finds will change everything. It was never just about the bunker. Tune in and discover the truth lies outside. Paradise, the official podcast, premieres February 16th, and stream Paradise on February 23rd on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
That's what's missing from a lot of these third-party vendors that come to you, is that they really don't know you, and they really don't know your audience, and they really don't know your story. This AI does know my story because it knows every story I've ever written, email I've asked it to read and decipher, everything. It knows everything about my business. It knows my numbers. And, it can pick out stuff. I simply say, look, hey, all the stories we wrote last year, what am I missing? Right? So it's the same thing. What is my value proposition to an advertiser? Why should somebody advertise with us instead of the legacy media that, what's the value in it and how do we approach them? And it's helping me through all of this stuff.
This is Small Press Big Ideas, a podcast about the business of local news in the United States. I'm your host, Paul Gewertz. Small Press Big Ideas is about the opportunities and challenges that local news publishers are facing for their businesses. I'll sit down and talk with journalists, entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and more in the local news industry to find out what's working, what isn't, and how the local news ecosystem can innovate and flourish in the 21st century. All right, today on the podcast, I'm joined by Mark Talkington. Mark is co-founder, I believe, of Satchel and founder of Valley Voice Media in Palm Springs, California. And he seems to have some pretty interesting stuff going on, which we'll talk about. So, Mark, thanks. Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here.
You bet. Pleasure.
So kind of just a baseline for the audience and for myself, since we're meeting for the first time. I'd love just to hear your story in local media and just your whole career, basically. See the path you've taken to get where you are now.
Yeah, it's a pretty good story. Pretty interesting path. I'll try to compress it as much as I can, right? So, I grew up in a Navy town called Bremerton, Washington, near Seattle, and started at the weekly paper near my hometown. And that paper was owned by a woman named Jenny Cooley. One of the editors, she had a couple papers. One of the editors there was her daughter, and I've been married to her for 35 years. So, it kind of ran in the family a little bit. I don't think I knew how much I enjoyed weekly newspapers and community newspapers until I kind of came full circle back to what I do now. So I started with weeklies, moved on. I covered the State House in Olympia for a daily in Seattle, bounced around up in the Northwest. And then my wife's family's from Orange County. I love the weather down here. Got a chance to move down here to the desert, up to Palm Springs, where in the early to mid-'90s, I went to work at the Desert Sun, which is the Gannett paper out here. Did various roles there, but finished the last few years as the front page editor of the newspaper, right? You know what that is. And somewhere around the mid-'90s, they started playing around with this thing called the World Wide Web. Learned how to code, learned how to do that stuff, and thought, this is really cool. I went to the corner office there at the paper and said, I think we should put the paper on the World Wide Web. And I got laughed out of the office. I got laughed out of Gannett, basically, who, they came out with an edict saying the internet's a fad, it'll never work. And our classified ad stranglehold is so strong that we'll always be printing money. I thought they were wrong. So I looked for an opportunity to go to work on the internet, and that opportunity came back up in Seattle for a guy named Paul Allen, who had co-founded Microsoft.
Heard of him?
Yeah, who recently left. And Paul was hiring, talented editors and myself to build cool things on the internet. And they were experimenting with a lot of things, right? Musicians and movies and sports and all sorts of stuff. And we got contracted at one point to build a website for the Eastern Sports Programming Network, right? ESPN. So me and other folks, like I think there were couple dozen folks at that time. We launched ESPN.com, 97, and I never looked back. I never even thought about newspapers, really. I mean, I knew they were struggling, but I never looked back. It was just so much fun to do what we were doing. At some point, Disney came and bought Paul's company. It was called Starwave, and I And a bunch of folks were given the opportunity to move to Bristol, Connecticut, where ESPN was located. Many of us chose not to, and a vast majority of those, maybe 40 of us at the time, went across Lake Washington to Microsoft and worked in various places. A lot of us at MSN, which was, just kind of starting out. And so I went to work on the homepage team at MSN, and I was there for the better part of the next 22 years and was not only an editor, but also a content project manager. And I got to do a lot of cool tech things. I built a lot of really great tools, real-time data analytics tools. I launched Microsoft's first social media accounts on Twitter and Facebook, which, by the way, at the time, the executives said, Twitter and Facebook, what is that? It's a fad. Right? It'll never work. And then 4 years later, hey, Mark, do you still have the keys to those accounts? And I'm like, I do. I've been doing them off the side of my desk. And by the way, you've got 16 million fans and followers on social media right now for a project that wasn't my job. Fast forward a few years, and, I was working on tools that were automating teams, production teams, content management systems, all that. And, around 2020-ish, I actually was one of the last 3 editors there working on the MSN homepage team. And I'd actually helped build, some of the tools that were replacing us. I went over to Bing for a little while to work with Bing News when the OpenAI relationship started, to kind of figure out how can we leverage AI with news products. And at the same time, I started this little Substack here in Palm Springs, another full circle moment, right? I'm like, well, the Gannett paper that I used to work at is really struggling, and they're not covering a lot of stuff that they should be. I'm just going to go cover those. I know how to cover a meeting. I mean, I haven't been a reporter for a number of years, but I can do it. So I did it. I started this Substack, and it took off, right? We're now at 18,500 subscribers. We're about ready to celebrate our 5th year. In February, it's no longer a Substack, right? It's a full-fledged news operation with newsletters and all that. But again, I started actually knowing the people I was covering and being out in the community, and I didn't know how much I missed that, right? There's nothing better on a bad day where you're getting yelled at and emailed by somebody than going to a community event and people love on you. People treat you kindly. People are happy to see you. And this community loves the Palm Springs Post. Our most valuable asset is the trust we have with that community. They absolutely love the Palm Springs Post, and it's been wildly successful. So I finally decided, I took my wife's advice and decided to start paying myself. And was able to, it's not a lot, as most people who start community news outlets know, but it was enough that I decided, in 2024, I'm gonna retire. I'm out of corporate world. I'm out of Microsoft. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm gonna devote myself full time to my company, which is Valley Voice Media. And in doing so, I knew I wanted to build more news outlets here in the Coachella Valley. There's 9 cities. And my dream was kind of to build a newsletter for each city, and then wrap them up into a weekly, here's our top 5 stories from the week that I send out on Saturday. But to do that, I needed to figure out a way not to work 100 hours a week, right? It's just me and Kendall, who I hired in 2022. And we are covering Palm Springs with a daily newsletter. Palm Springs has a lot of A3 news, but not a lot of A1 news every day. So it's a struggle. And we focus relentlessly on municipal coverage. We don't cover sports or entertainment or a lot of features. We cover City Hall and the type of journalism that's kind of fallen by the wayside. We're in every meeting, right? This is accountability journalism is what we do. But it takes a lot of time. These meetings, some city council meetings go 6 hours, and then, you have to write a story, and that takes a few hours. And then you have to build the newsletter, and then you build it on the web, and then you put it on social media. I mean, it's easily 100 hours a week to do that. But along came my friend Peter, who had recently retired as a VP at Microsoft, and he had been playing with AI, and he made this AI called Maria that could listen in on a meeting and take part. So he debuted this at a conference on the Salton Sea, which is a big lake down here. And Maria was on a screen and she was listening, and people would ask her questions, and then she would interact, and she would tell this one person who was speaking, I like that, and here's why. And it was incredible. And I said, well, gosh, Peter, if Maria can listen to a meeting, can she write a news story about a meeting? He's like, oh yeah, she can do that. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So we spent a couple of weekends going back and forth on email, Peter in his mad laboratory and me in my spare guest room here. And we developed a little thing I called Paul, which listened to meetings. Huh? Yeah.
I said, hey, that's me.
Well, yeah. And it's not, so it was named after a guy who I tried to poach from the paper and who had some pretty exorbitant salary and benefit demands. And I was like, I can't afford that. Screw it. I'm going to go make my own. And I did. So we called it Paul. It listened to council meetings. It told me what stories it could write, and then it wrote the stories. And we fed it all of my writing and all of the Palm Springs Post writing. And we taught it to write like a community news site. And we taught it everything about Palm Springs. We fed it all the information about Palm Springs. And then eventually we gated it, right? We closed it off from the internet so that it only works with what it's given. And so it stops these hallucinations. And Paul, Paul cut my time pretty drastically. It probably takes about 10% of the time it used to do what we do. And it was a huge stress reliever. Paul got written up in, Neiman and Fast Company and NPR and elsewhere. And then I started speaking at conferences and demoing it. And eventually we turned it over to a couple of women in New Zealand who have a company called Contented, and they were making AI agents and stuff like that. And they built Paul into Satchel. Satchel is a subscription, it's a SaaS product used by news outlets from like Reno to London. And you log in and you basically use Paul, all my prompts, everything I developed to make it become like a news writer and an assistant and all that. So in doing that and leaving Microsoft, I freed up a lot of time, and I was better able to focus on growing my business, and then on launching other products. And we now last year we launched 2 to go along with Palm Springs, and we now have, the largest chain of local news outlets here in the Coachella Valley. And so this little retirement Substack turned into, an actual company, and just a full circle journey back into community news.
That is a really crazy story. You sent me going a few different ways on that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go a little out of order on my questions just because I'm curious now.
Sure.
So you mentioned that you built Paul. It's an easy name for me to remember, like I said, to help you kind of write and put out all this stuff. A question I frequently ask on this podcast is what news leaders and, it's legacy media outlets, newsletters, it's the gamut. And I ask them what they're using AI for and what they're not. And it's funny. Almost everybody says like, oh, we'll never let it write stories. We can't let it write stories, which I understand if you go on ChatGPT because that thing will hallucinate. Like it'll straight up lie to you when you ask it something and then double down on the lie.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe a 2-part question with Paul. Is it fully like writing and shipping the stories, or is there still human oversight? Can you walk me through that a little bit, the mechanics of how that works? Yeah.
So yes and no, right? So I'll just tell you how I use it. I don't use Satchel, the SaaS product, anymore because it was my, I've always, when I built tools for editors and reporters, I've tried to make them as efficient and lean as possible so that you can sit down at the desk on day one when you're hired and use the tool. Right. So Satchel, now that it's built on top of Contented, which is basically a meeting tool, a tool that listens to meetings and gives insights, it's a little bloated for my everyday use. So I rebuilt Satchel in Claude and OpenAI a little bit, but I basically use Claude and we just pull up our projects. And what we do is we will record the meetings that we're watching, always watching. Always watching the meeting, right? But we're not taking notes. I used to sit there and type 14 pages of single line word notes, and I wasn't really paying attention to the meeting. I was just trying to pay attention to keeping up on the notes. Or I'm old school. I would bring one of these things, and And I don't have to do that anymore, right? All I do now is I bring my phone, I set it down, I record it, I get the transcript, I make the transcript in Otter or something else, and I bring that transcript into AI, and I run Satchel, and it lists 10 stories it could write for me based on what it's hearing. Now, if you're at a city council meeting that's 4 hours long and they have 20 agenda items, really, really helpful. It'll listen to the entire conversation and it'll say, here's what I think are the stories. And most of the time, right, you go to a meeting and you have a notion of what you want to write about. Oh, this is the most important thing. This housing development's the most important thing. That's the story. It identifies all those stories. And then I tell it to write the story. And I'll give it staff reports. I'll give it, PDF presentations that staff make, all the information that I can find, load it up into there, and it writes the story. And it writes an excellent story, excellent journalism, but sometimes it's not sometimes it's a little bland, not often. So then I'll take it into another one that I call Smooth Operator. And that prompt tells it, look, go in, improve the transitions, make the flow better, write this a little more clearly, all that type of stuff. But always, as I'm building it in the CMS, right? I'm checking it. I'm going back. I'm listening to the audio, and Kendall does the same thing. We're listening. We're double checking. But because we watched the meeting, we know. It was the mayor who said this, and so when the story says the mayor said it, okay, cool, that's fact checked. What Satchel does is like triple bonus fact check. It will, in the background, it will write the story, then fact check that story, then fact check what it's written. Peter coded some of this stuff up, and it's like triple checking. But again, it's only working with what it's been given. And it gets me sometimes. I'll say, add this in, and it'll say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Right? This was not in the transcript. It's not in the documents given to me. So I can't do it. So then I have to, and it'll say, how do you know this? Do you really know this? And I'm like, yep, I know it. But again, so then I've got the story. Then we do, we're heavy on newsletters. We have a daily newsletter in Palm Springs. It's kind of an Axios format, and we can get into that later about audience attention spans and why our newsletter works where others don't. But then it can shapeshift. It'll shapeshift into a lead for the newsletter. It'll shapeshift into a briefly, which is just 3 little bullet points. It'll write it as what we call a kicker, which is Kindles from TV. So this is the last 30 seconds of a TV show where they show the cute puppy or the cute animal. We have we have a little, try to do a little cute thing at the end. The page topper at the top of the page will say, welcome to Tuesday. Hey, it's just little things like, hey, the bus system wants a survey. Want you to take their survey, right? So it'll shapeshift all the language we need, and we copy and paste it. But again, it doesn't ask follow-up questions. It doesn't build source relationships. It doesn't provide a lot of context, right? Or know what actually matters to your audience. All it does is, take transcripts and write stories, which, by the way, is something I was looking to get out of. I hate that. I hate being a reporter. I hate writing news. I hate having to sit and bang on the keyboard. Some people may love it. There are people who we've gone, to work with who are adamantly opposed to this and won't do it and think it's going to kill news reporters and all that. And I counter, and I've got a big long paper on all this. I counter by saying, no, it's going to make you a better journalist if you use the tool the right way. Whenever I speak about this, it's always the same message, right? You're going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by someone who knows how to use AI, right? And I know that's probably now fairly common to hear. For me, the drudgery was writing. I didn't want to write. I'm a tech guy. I am not a news reporter. I want to do cool stuff on the internet. I don't want to spend my days going to meetings and writing stories about land use and planning. I want somebody else to do that. And I couldn't hire somebody, so I made something that could do that for me. And I mean, yeah, I get this a lot, right? When I go to colleges and speak, the professors, and they don't like to hear what I have to say, but I think I was ahead of my time trying to put the newspaper on the internet. I think I was ahead of my time trying to make our first Twitter and Facebook accounts at Microsoft. And this is the third thing. I think I'm ahead of my time. And I think as this goes on, journalists are going to see the value in using AI, even if they want to be the writers and they want to get in there and mold the clay. You can't tell me that something that can read a 900-page staff report or any court document and boil it down into simple language that you can use in the story isn't going to be of value.
Right. And I think one part that stuck out to me there when you were talking about how you used to furiously take notes and not hear the meeting. And now the AI takes the notes and you can hear the meeting. That's like the best use, like the ideal use case of AI as a tool, in my opinion. It's actually giving you more context as a human to listen and get the value out of it and outsource the busy work. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. If you are watching the room and you see the city attorney wink at the mayor about something.
Yeah, there's body language. Yeah.
Or you're out in the hallway while they may be deliberating on item 17B, but you can run out in the hallway and grab somebody who said something that's interesting. You can spend more time reporting and less time note-taking and writing, and that's the value for me.
Yeah, I think that's an important takeaway, especially for publishers, local media publishers in particular, which is kind of a core of this audience. So you I had this question written up, but you kind of answered this a little bit. You've been included I saw on your LinkedIn, on a list of local journalism AI leaders to follow with some other interesting people on there. You kind of gave us your views on that. We're just talking about it. But how do you think, besides just this tool, how do you think local news organizations should be thinking about it overall? Any further thoughts beyond that in other use cases? Just being more open-minded in general, or does that make sense?
Yeah, I would tell you one, speaking purely from a publishing standpoint, I'm working a lot now currently on advertising and trying to get to know, I've never sold an ad in my life and I don't have any interest in doing it, right? I like the tech part and I like the news part, but I know that I need to know a little bit more about advertising and what our philosophy is and why we choose the ad partners that we choose and all that type of stuff. And this is catching me up to speed and it's helping me I'll give you a quick example. I hired I have a third-party vendor I work with that provided me all the tech stack, but also my reader revenue, campaign development, and my audience acquisition, ads and all that type of stuff. And I was paying them quite a bit of money every month. And then we had an issue where they went through some turnover and I got ghosted for a little bit, but I still ended up paying, right? So I was paying a percentage of my overall revenue. And it was not nothing. And so this year, I fired them from that part, from the reader revenue campaigns, and I had AI help me write up my materials, right? The emails I would send out, the page toppers I would send out while we were running this campaign. And I generated just as much revenue this year as I did last year, paying them thousands and thousands of dollars to do this. And all I had to do was sit down. These AI systems, whether it's Claude or I guess I should probably put in a shout out for Copilot since I'm a Microsoft guy. Pilot, OpenAI, ChatGPT, use them for different things, but they developed all these campaign materials, but they made it more personal. That's what's missing from a lot of these third-party vendors that come to you is that they really don't know you and they really don't know your audience and they really don't know your story. This AI does know my story because it knows every story I've ever written, every email I've asked it to read and decipher, everything. It knows everything about my business. It knows my numbers. And, it can pick out stuff. I simply say, look, hey, all the stories we wrote last year, what am I missing? Go through all the transcripts I fed you from every city council meeting, every planning commission meeting, every architectural review committee meeting. Tell me what I'm missing. Tell me what stories I haven't done, and it will, right? So it's the same thing. What is my value proposition to an advertiser? Why should somebody advertise with us instead of the legacy media that, what's the value in it and how do we approach them? And it's helping me through all of this stuff.
That's great. Real quick sidetrack. So this is a very AI-centric conversation, which obviously you're a tech guy. This basically AI startup on the side. But you were talking about you've never sold an ad in your life. Is it another theme on the show is like sustainability, business models, etc. This started as a Substack, so obviously reader revenue. What else? Could you tell me a little bit more about the business? Like, is it 100% reader revenue? Are there other things hitting the cash register?
Yeah.
Just on that side,
Yeah.
I'd like to hear about that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a split between reader revenue and ads. There's a little bit of grant revenue, very little. We have a really good nonprofit here. It's called the Coachella Valley Journalism Foundation. They do a lot of work raising money to help everybody here, the independents and the legacy, getting them interns. May sneeze. No. All right, I'm not. But that type of thing. But not a lot. And sidebar on that, a lot of people have approached me and said, you'd be great for this, figure grant. We're giving it out. Man, we love you. And we really think you should apply for it. And I worked my ass off applying for them, and then I've been turned down. And why have I been turned down? Well, the grant is for local news publishers to help them grow, and you're already growing, so you don't need to grow. You don't need the money. And it's like, okay, I get it, right? Or you're not in a news desert, right? You're in Southern California, and that's not a news desert, where at the same time, the county we're in has like fewer reporters per 100,000 than just about anywhere. Anyway, so it's a mix. It's a mix of reader revenue and sales. We have 3 now. We have the Palm Springs Post, the Indio Post, and the Palm Desert Post. Only one of them has any ad revenue, and that's Palm Springs. Only one of them has any reader revenue, and that's Palm Springs. So the Palm Springs community, which has really stepped up and supported us, they're actually helping other communities here in the Coachella Valley get news for free, which is kind of cool. Yeah. So that's it, right? I'm trying to look here at my notes. Our mission now, now that we are a network, and we have 4 if you include the Coachella Valley Reporter that we send out on Saturdays that just kind of says, hey, here's 5 stories that you may not have read. Our mission now is to kind of think more network and less siloed, right? What I get is, we lost our Indio advertiser. Well, we lost an advertiser, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the Indio advertiser, right? Oh, now, we're pretty highly respected, and we're pretty broad, and we have a pretty good size audience, and it's now time to lean in and think kind of larger on that, because I think we're, every publisher will say that they're underfunded, but we know the rates that others are getting for delivering less, and so we need to hike some of our rates, and we need to think bigger and broader. But that's it. That's it. We're the 3 newsletters. One of them, Palm Springs, is Monday through Friday. 2 of them are once a week, but we also send out like a calendar on Sundays. And then there's the Saturday CV Reporter, which goes out to everybody, right? Like 25,000 people get the CV Reporter. All of our subscribers get that. They all have way north of 50%. CV Reporter has like 80% open rate. That's the model, right? And that's what works for us.
That's awesome. Real quick to touch on the grant thing, that has been such a recurring, not necessarily on the podcast, but conversation I've been having with people in your kind of position. A lot of frustrations with maybe where some of this grant money is going and who's being selected for it and who's not being selected for it. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Some friends of the show have been very, very frustrated with some of the same stuff. So you're not alone there. So I had a question in here, and it was basically flash forward 5 years. Where do you see the local media ecosystem? I'm going to change that a little bit, but I'm going to keep the same kind of flash forward 5 years. I'd like you to talk me through, if everything goes at the current rate and everything, talk about this network. Is that the word you used?
Yeah.
Kind of business model, where you see kind of Valley Voice headed, and maybe also after that talk about Satchel also, and just look at that roadmap down the road. I'd love to hear your dream scenario there.
Well, it's a real business now, right? Like one of the reporters that I interviewed that I didn't hire, he just hung up on, are you a real business? Do you have a business license? Or and I'm like, dude, just yes, right? But we're not just a Substack now. Now we're a real media company, and I've certainly spent the last year since I retired from Microsoft acting like a real media company and acting like a real publisher and getting more serious about this, right? This is a real thing, and my goal is to keep building it, but to build it smart and efficient. And I think that's what we've been able to do. We can output a whole lot of content, a whole lot of work, and have a very efficient publishing system, ad sales system, all that type of stuff because of the tooling that I've been able to create and because of the systems and processes that I put into place. And what I'm finding is when you have two kids, it's not twice the work as one kid, it's like 4 times the work of one kid. But I'm finding the more of these we have, the easier the work gets and the more efficient we're getting, the more efficiencies I'm finding. So I think for now, right, with the 2 of us, we're going to stop at 3, but we want more. We want to go to La Quinta and Rancho Mirage and some of these other cities. I like the high desert where Yucca Valley and Pioneer Town. I like all that. But my trusty advisor will tell me, you got to grow at any cost. Grow, get yourself, just get funding and spend it, grow. And I haven't done that, and I refuse to do that, right? I had never owned a business before. So, I treated it kind of like my home budget. It's like, look, we can't spend more than we have,
Right.
and we need to save. And he look at the books and he's like, dude, you got to spend more money and you got to grow it, grow. And I'm just, no, I just don't want to do that. So 5 years from now, right? 7 years from now is when I want to retire. Kendall's in her late 20s. I'm in my late 50s, and my wife and I we want to retire in 7 years. And I want to hand this off to Kendall. She's the next generation, but I have to hand it off to her and other people, because she can't do it all alone. So my goal is to somehow find the money to hire another person and maybe another couple of people and open more of these and kind of complete this picture here in the Coachella Valley. We may not have 9, but we should have at least 5, and each one focused on just one city, right? And each one of those just focused on municipal coverage and accountability journalism, putting out, newsletters that are fun and informative, right? It's that model. I think of it sometimes as like something you can pull off a shelf, right? And I've coached a lot of other people into starting from Oregon to Florida, even here in Riverside County. I've given people the secret sauce and told them, here's how you do it, here's how you build it, here's how you monetize it. And I've watched them grow and grow and grow and follow this model. And so I know it works. And I just, in 5 years, right, I think we have to continue on this hyper-local type, one-person shop type of company for media. I get frustrated when people say newspapers are dying and so media is dying, and that's just, and I think I used a curse word in one article that was written, but I think it's absolute BS. There are plenty of really good journalists. I've seen people get laid off from Gannett papers in the middle of Ohio and start something like the Palm Springs Post, and they can make a living. You're not going to get rich, but they can make a living. And I think that's the model. And it has to be because more people trust their neighbors than they do the people on their TV coming to them from Washington, D.C. or somewhere. So I think, I personally am a big fan of the newsletter first thing, right? Our newsletters are, like I said, they're kind of smart brevity format. So they're easily scannable. A lot of the topics we cover, these municipal things, city budgets and all that, they're very meaty topics, but the fact we can boil them down to 300 words and help people understand what's at issue, 90 seconds or less, right? People love that format. And I'm not saying don't write longer format on the web and all that, but I am saying these little newsletters that are easy to scan and easy to read in the morning that have a little bit of personality, right? Kendall and I put our feelings at the bottom of the Palm Springs Post every morning, butter cookies and ate them all. Mark's dog got a new sweater and then got a cut on a thorn bush or something, right? Just people know us. We're their neighbors. They see us in the community, right? This is the old weekly newspaper world where you knew the publisher. You knew the reporters. Their kids went to your kids' school, all that type of stuff. And I really think it works, and it can rebuild trust and credibility, and it can get communities informed and get people informed. And really, I think it's the model. It certainly has been in our community as we eat into the market share of the legacy media. So I know it can work because it's worked for me. If it worked for me, it worked for anybody.
That's great. That's fantastic. And what about Satchel? You said it's basically a SaaS offering.
Yeah.
Who's that? Is that would be a good fit, like for folks listening to this, like local media, open-minded local media?
Yeah.
Publishers, like who's that for? What's it look like? Yeah.
Yeah. So the people who are using it now are publishers, local media, publisher change, right? It's designed for them because it was designed for me. We made it to solve my problems, and my problems are the problems that a lot of community news publishers have. There's not enough people to do the work. Sometimes the work isn't high quality. So I would recommend taking a look at it. It's at satchelai.com, but also reaching out to me, right? I mean, I can help you. My wife is in the other room. She works for a big accounting firm. Her job has nothing to do with AI, but on weekends, I've been helping her. They gave her some keys to some AI tools, and I've been helping her develop agents in Copilot that do some of the really grunt work at her accounting firm. And she's had a lot of success. So I'm happy to help any publisher who wants to know how to use these tools. I do it actively every day. Somebody doesn't need to pay $99 a month for a SaaS product, and they're not going to have to sooner rather than later, right? I'm like, we were first a couple of years ago to get something like this out because there's nothing else out there like it. But the AI tools have come so far, and they're so much better now, right? I use Zapier to do some automations as I'm trying to move some of my publishing over to Beehive. Inside Zapier, they have Copilot, and you just tell it the zap you want, and it builds it, right?
Really?
I gave up on Zapier a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, me too. I've got to look at it again.
Yeah. I needed people to be able to sign up on my website for an email and have it go into Beehive at both the newsletter that we were building, but also the weekly newsletter that I send out to all the subscribers. And I was exporting, importing constantly, right? I run, Facebook lead gen ads, hundreds and hundreds of people you're getting from those lead gen ads. Export, import. Man, I was like, well, maybe I'll give Zapier another shot. And I did, and I went in there and it said, I'm almost crying. I'm thinking about it. It said, what do you want to do? Just type it up here. And I said, I want to take my emails that are coming into this system and, or through Facebook lead gen. I want to put them into Beehive. Oh, okay. Here, log into Beehive, log into Facebook. I've built your Zap. Press this button to test it. Tested it. It worked. I'm like, holy crap. And
That's
now,
awesome.
So I spent last weekend building a ton of Zaps, and it works really, really well. But I don't know how I got into that, but.
No, that's great. That's very useful for me. I gave up on Zapier a few years ago because
I did. It was, I can't code, but now, the same thing with Beehive, right? They have a chat bot in there. You can look at the knowledge base, or you can chat over on the right rail.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm like, hey, I don't see my nav bar in mobile on this page. I've correctly identified what happened. Go check it. And I go check it, and it's fixed.
Yeah, it's
right?
crazy.
I mean, for somebody who worked at the redheaded stepchild of Microsoft, which is what MSN was, getting dev time, we would never get dev time. We were always low prio. It took us 7 years to build a poll on the front page of MSN because they just did not want to give us dev time. These things, these are that dev time. They do it for you.
That's a great framing. Mark, this was awesome. You said Satchel AI. You said connect with you on LinkedIn. What else do you want me to link to, or what else do you want to promote that people should check out?
Our newsletters, if people want to see what our newsletters look like, they can start at thepalmspringspost.com. They can start at theindiapost.com. They can start at thepalmdesertpost.com, or they can just go to valleyvoicemedia.org, and they can see all our newsletters right there on the all four of our products there. But yeah, I mean, every year I vow to quit LinkedIn, but it hasn't happened yet. So people can reach out to me there. And I love to chat. I love to help. So yeah, come find me.
All right. I'm going to link to that. Mark, thank you so much, man. This is great. This is awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to Small Press Big Ideas. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to help the show, the best thing you can do is to tell a friend or colleague and just take a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to right now. It only takes a minute out of your day, but it really does help the podcast grow and reach more ears. Check back for new episodes every Monday.